My name is Michelle Zahn.
I'm Rod Moeller, and I'm with the Nebraska Firearm Owners Association. So what else are we going to talk about today, Michelle?
We're going to talk about suppressors. They are sometimes called silencers.
Okay, great. I have a few silencers myself, so I enjoy talking about those. I know that the original patent called them silencers, so that's why a lot of people refer to them that way, but they're also known as suppressors within the industry. It seems like people have maybe the wrong view of what a suppressor can do based on Hollywood.
Yes, it's definitely not completely silent.
So one of the things that people don't necessarily understand, I mean, it makes sense when they hear it, but there's actually at least 4 different components of a rifle or any firearm that makes noise. And a suppressor only takes care of one of those. I mean, the first thing is the actual trigger itself. When you press the trigger, say when you're dry firing, you hear that click. It's not real loud, but it is a noise that the firearm makes. The next is going to be the action. I mean, if you're chambering around, if you're cycling the action to ensure that it's clear, whatever you're doing, you operate the action, that makes noise.
That's actually what scares a lot of criminals, is the sound of the action.
Yeah, there's the old joke about, the international symbol of get out of the house is racking the slide on, on an 870.
So that's a good sound.
The next thing that causes noise is going to be the blast, the actual hot gases leaving the muzzle of the barrel. And that's what we hear. That's the majority of that loud bang, is those hot gases meeting the outside atmosphere. And that's what a suppressor actually contains and tames. That crack is the 4th thing that you will hear when you're firing a firearm. You won't necessarily have that with maybe a 9mm, definitely not with a 45, but some 9mm do go up to maybe 1,200 feet per second. And so you do have some of that crack as well.
About how much?
That's about 30 decibels on average.
Okay.
They vary depending upon a number of factors, how much you pay, the materials they're made out of, how big they are. I mean, the larger the suppressor, the better sound suppression you're going to have.
And that is one of the disadvantages, is the weight at the front.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can say it's a disadvantage or an advantage. As a shooter, I've appreciated at the range not having as much recoil.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little fun shooting with a suppressor, and it doesn't recoil as much, and it's not as loud as we just discussed. So Rod, I appreciate my concealed carry, which is my 6-hour P238. Obviously, it's nice and short. It helps me to be concealed. This suppressor, depending on the length, I don't know how I would actually handle concealing that.
It's really not something that people would use for a concealed carry piece. It's really more something that they're going to use either in their home to save the hearing of anybody in the house,
Okay.
should, God forbid, they actually need to use a gun to defend themselves, or if they're at the range. So it's not something you're generally going to find holsters for. It's not something that would be practical to carry as part of your concealed carry. Plus, I mean, it's really, really hot.
That's true. I
And on a
remember.
practical level, I mean, can you imagine trying to find something this on the end of your gun?
No.
It's just not going to happen. And with how hot it is, if a criminal were to try to use this, where are they going to put it when they're done shooting? They're going to burn themselves, aren't they?
That's true.
This gets as hot as a muffler in your car.
Yep. So it's not a practical thing for conceal. I'm not hearing that it's really that simple at all.
No, it's used generally more at a range. So how do you think this would play in as an instructor with maybe your new students?
I've been thinking about that. With new shooters, I've worked with several shooters that haven't even fired a gun. And so we teach them the fundamentals and the basics. When we finally get to the range, there's a lot of anticipation and a bit of anxiety about the recoil, the loud sound, and it would be pretty nice to have possibly less of that with the suppressor. So with that in mind, I have not seen suppressors. I mean, it's not some topic that I've been able to, I shop for or talk about. How do I find one and get one? What are the procedures?
Well, in order to sell them, it's a lot more restricted than having a federal firearms license, like most, like any gun store would have. There's an extra type of permitting to sell those things, and there might be 20 or so dealers across the entire state of Nebraska that carry these. They sell them like any other accessory. In fact, if you were to go overseas, they're sold in just about any hardware store for $50 or so.
Really?
But here in the States, because they're so highly regulated by the ATF, they're rather expensive. They can run anywhere from maybe $400 for a 22, $500, $600 for a handgun suppressor, and $700 on up to 12 or more for a rifle suppressor. But you basically buy it like you would any other product, and the dealer will fill out the paperwork that you need to send to the ATF along with a check for $200 to pay a tax on getting this, submit fingerprints, passport photos, and send it to the ATF. And it takes about 9 to 12 months for them to go through the process, do a background check, and eventually send you an approved stamp back, which then you can pick up your purchased suppressor from the dealer.
That's for one?
Any NFA item you purchase, any suppressor you purchase, you have to go through that same process because they each have their own serial number.
So why are some politicians wanting to ban these?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to a misunderstanding as to what they are. As we already talked about, they don't really make it silent like Hollywood movies make them out to be. And they just really misunderstand how they're used. They think that a criminal would use that. And that really isn't really practical. I don't know that we have any reported instances of violent crime where a suppressor was used.
That's very frustrating to me because when there's something that I could use practically to be more responsible with my own protection or helping someone understand how to use a firearm, be safe instead of afraid. It's again, I'm paying for possibly the criminals doing the wrong thing, which I'm hearing isn't even an issue from the statistics. And then I've got to pay for it, and so do my customers.
Back in the 30s, when they decided they were going to make it very difficult to get certain types of firearms, fully automatic, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns. I don't know why they put an accessory on that when everything else that's on that list is a firearm. It's really no different than maybe a seat cover in your car or replacing the muffler in your car. It really doesn't need to be regulated because it's an accessory.
Based on suppressors was on TV, like we talked about earlier, in the movies, and it was always used to murder someone. But now that I've been able to experience it and the benefits of it and think of very practical ways to save hearing, to help someone learn quicker, and to literally make it easier for me to actually fire at the range, I've gotten more educated. And I'm wondering if people were to understand more, there's a lot more uses than Hollywood's depiction of a suppressor.
And that's really why we're making this video, is so that you, the general public, know a little bit more about this topic and can share it with your friends that may not be aware, and be more educated when you talk to your politicians. All right, guys. Thank you to Omaha Gun Club for allowing us to use their amazing facilities to do the recording here today. Very much appreciate their contribution, and we'll see you around Nebraska.